This is the causes, events, and consequences of World War II, Part 2, the events. So jumping back to 1939, I know we finished the last video a little bit further in history, but jumping back to 1939, we had some problems in Poland, where Poland was being invaded by Germany, and Great Britain was saying, yeah, you can't do that, we're gonna go to war with you. And they had some support from Canada, because we all know the Canadian Army is awesome on their horses. South Africa, they're a big military juggernaut. And Australia and New Zealand, I think they sent over some kangaroos to help them out. So it was really no support whatsoever. Going to 1940, a lot is happening. The USSR, the Soviet Union, is starting to jump into Finland. Germany is invading Denmark, and even Great Britain moves over to Iceland to try and make sure that Germany doesn't take it over, because strategically it could be a great jumping point, a hopping point for Germany trying to get over to North America. So a lot of movement was going on, and Great Britain was not too happy about it. So the Prime Minister at the time, Neville Chamberlain, was booted out and replaced with Winston Churchill. Also in 1940 is the Tripartite Act, and this basically says that Japan, Nazi Germany, and Italy are all coming together as the Axis powers, and these are the notorious bad guys of the war. And basically, if you went to war with one of them, you went to war with all three. And this sets the stage for our Battle Royale World War II. We have the Axis powers and the Allied powers. By 1941, the U.S. had joined the war. Great Britain and the Soviet Union were already at battle with Japan and Nazi Germany, and this is where the war went global. So some of the big events, just to kind of go over them very briefly. We're not going to get too detailed. In 1942, the Battle of Midway. This happened on June 4th. This was the United States versus Japan. If you know that Midway is an atoll, which is a reef of sorts. This was supposed to be an attack that would cripple the United States and pretty much give Japan the naval advantage. But because of U.S. code breakers, they were able to decipher what the Japanese were planning on doing, and they ended up just whooping them. And one of the quotes is from a historian said it was the greatest naval victories in history. So the U.S. got a very good victory, an impressive one there, and crippled the Japanese Navy. In 1943, Italy surrenders. However, Mussolini ends up escaping with the help of the Germans, and they actually set up a new government in northern Italy with the support of the German army. So Italy surrenders, but they weren't completely out of the war by then. Now another huge event, but one that is not really specific to World War II, is the Holocaust, and I'm sure you have all heard of the Holocaust. The Germans were exterminating 6 million Jews. And these were also among Soviet civilians and Polish civilians as Germany started taking over. The Holocaust did not start right away with the war. It actually began in 1938 and started escalating further and further. We won't get into the Holocaust in much detail in this unit, but we may later on in the year. 1944, D-Day, the Normandy Invasion. This is one of the most historic days in military history. The Axis lose, and it happened in two parts. The first part was an air raid. We started bombing and sending in paratroopers. The second one was an amphibious assault. We brought our troops up on boats, and this was everybody. This was Great Britain and the United States and some rogue French soldiers as well. This turned out to be successful because there was some bad weather that day, so we had a lot of cover, and this ended up pushing the Germans back and eventually led them to lose France. Some other important dates. We have 1944, the Battle of the Bulge, and 1945, the U.S. Marines invade Iwo Jima. This is both a loss for the Axis powers. A big turn in U.S. history was President Roosevelt dies in 1945, and Truman becomes the president afterwards, and he has to make one of the most difficult decisions in all U.S. history as a president, which we'll talk about in a minute. 1945, Hitler commits suicide knowing that the Germans have lost the war, basically. May 7th, Germany surrenders. However, now that Italy and Germany have surrendered, we still have one more that hasn't surrendered. We have Japan. So, President Truman decides that on August 6th, he is going to change the world forever and drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. This happened early in the morning. It was absolutely devastating. We'll go into more detail later, but there's still repercussions from it to today. And August 9th in Nagasaki was the second bomb that was dropped. So the U.S. pretty much changed the world view on nuclear weapons at this point and warfare forever. That was enough to cripple Japan, and they ended up realizing they cannot compete with the United States, and they surrender on September 2nd. The next video will be consequences that are dished out.